Resident Evil Confidential Report is an old J2ME Java title released exclusively for mobile phones. It's set in the interim of the 1998 Raccoon City zombie outbreak, where you play as two characters, FBI agent Naomi McClane and rookie RPD officer Tyler Hamilton. For fans of the series, this is no doubt already sounding a little bit pissing familiar. If not for the recycled characters, then for the fact that at the time of this review, there have been no less than fucking 11 other Resident Evil games set in Raccoon City. Anyway, they say context is worth 80 IQ points, and on first glance it may be easy to dismiss Resident Evil Confidential Report as an ugly, long in the tooth, and lazily thrown together piece of unplayable shovelware. But, looking at the industry standards of mobile gaming at the time of its release, this may not be entirely fair. The game was initially released in 2003 in Japan, but most likely due to issues with marketing and localization, it wouldn't see a Western release until 2006. Now, in that 3-year interval, it's unfortunate for Capcom that quite a hell of a lot of technological advancements were made in mobile gaming. To put it simply, mobile games went from looking like this, to looking like this, to looking like this, to looking like this. So, at a time when Western mobile gamers were used to their games looking like this, Resident Evil Confidential Report was released looking like this. This was a bit of a bad start, and the game didn't really receive a lot of attention, except in Spain, apparently, where Java releases are still inexplicably popular to this day. So the dated graphics are probably the first thing that jumps out at you, but at the moment you're seeing this on an emulator, and now if you look on a mobile phone from 2003, it does look that little bit more palatable. Despite its painfully stiff character animation, the bright visuals and crisp textures are actually moderately appealing. Things look like what they're supposed to be, and many of the enemies enjoy a similar colour palette to those of the console releases. The art direction, elementary as it may be, is actually in touch with its source material. The environments and the bad guys are varied enough so that you don't feel like you're killing the same things in the same places over and over and over a fucking again. And it has a few fancy immersive touches like the knife, pistol, and rifle, each corresponding to different character sprites. Shit, even Doom didn't have that. So, your character wakes up after a big old explosion and finds that coming toward him is a horde of pasty-looking fellas who've had a few too many cans of T-Virus Genuine Draft. Your initial instinct is to empty your clip into the closest zombie's face, but you quickly find that it's not as simple as that, because Resident Evil Confidential Report is in fact a turn-based fucking game. Now, this bizarre U-turn in gameplay that Capcom has made actually works quite well. I suppose the best things to compare the gameplay to are the original XCOM games, Jagged Alliance, Fallout 1 and Fallout 2, or perhaps most accurately, the profoundly flawed Monolith title, Gorky 17. Nonetheless, the gameplay is extremely stripped down and basic compared to these, as you can see. It also lacks an action point system or even the ability to crouch, but it does control pretty much as expected. I suppose top-down isometric stuff is pretty hard to fuck up. Plus, this is a mobile game, and that being the case, it's supposed to be a simple and passive experience. Speaking of which, the save system is lenient, and the gameplay is easily divided into digestible chunks. Throughout the course of the game, you basically blast your way through Raccoon City, visiting such overly familiar environments as the hospital, the university, the laboratory, and the museum. Interestingly as well, Confidential Report actually purports to be canon, i.e. part of the official Resident Evil story, so that's a nice little incentive for hardcore fans of the series, even though we all know that nobody plays Resident Evil for the fucking plot. Honestly, it's just about held together by a paper-thin story, all of which is told through text-based narrative exposition. The series is known for its bad writing, but the fact that it's a script written by Capcom's B team leads to some deplorably unresolved plot threads and some hilarious non-sequiturs. For example, there's a photo on S's desk. It's of an obese person. Yeah, it's not exactly fucking Tolstoy, is it? But what can you expect? The game's got puzzles in it, but they're mercifully simplistic, mostly based around item retrieval, with nothing too obtuse and no irritating pixel hunting to be found here. One of its strongest mechanics for me has to be in its inventory management, because nothing says tense atmosphere like scarce supplies and emphasis on ammo conservation, and I can honestly say that this really is its saving grace, because this is ammo conservation done properly. The music's atmospheric and is a lot like a sort of MIDI tribute to the save theme in Resident Evil 2, but it does get very, very repetitive, jolting and speeding up every time an enemy sees you, which can, to be fair, get really fucking annoying. Also, the emulator I played this on would, for some unknown reason, play the music at wildly inappropriate volumes, speeds and tempos, to the point that it began to feel like I was listening to Zaster on a child's dictaphone. Amazingly though, Confidential Report's gameplay is somehow sufficiently compelling and addictive that I was able to just about overlook the fact that the guns have no sound effects, and neither do the enemies. For obvious reasons, this is its biggest letdown. The rest of the shooting is done right though, with some guns allowing for burst fire for each turn, others having limited ranges, and a broad enough system of damage deviation to have you happily blasting away with one gun whilst painstakingly saving every last round of another. So just a couple of finishing touches and this thing could have been a whole lot better. But criticism aside, it's a pretty solid game for something that's under 400 kilobytes, that is to say a game that takes up about the same amount of disk space as 6 small JPEGs. Definitely a gem for its era, but sadly too far behind the times to play unless you already have a vested interest in the franchise. So, if you're a hardcore Resident Evil fan or just generally want to have your willpower tested, Confidential Report's not perfect, but probably worth a look.